Hello, how are you guys today? I wanted to jump on and do a little bit of a live on why you might feel discomfort in your throat when you sing. So we're going to go through 5 really common reasons that you might feel tension or pushing or like a little jabbing sensation or tickling, scratching, etc. So there are a number of different things that feel like they're the throat's fault, when in reality it's something in the way that you've set it up, or it's something in the way that you've used your breath, or there's another muscle that's adding tension that feels like it's the throat's fault. So I just wanted to come in and let you know that it's not always the throat's fault. Hi, those of you that are live, nice to see you. So we're going to go through things that I want you to, next time you're having a practice session, just ask yourself questions. Ask yourself, is this the case? Is that the case? Can I try what Kim suggested to decipher where my throat tension is coming from? Because when you know where it's coming from, you can fix it. That's the empowering thing. So the first thing is, how are you breathing in? So one thing that can cause throat tension right from the very get-go is gasping in. So having this really audible gasp sound, and you can probably see in my throat here, this tightening. It's already getting into this constricted position. So the first thing, if you're feeling throat tension, you need to ask yourself the question, do I breathe in like that? Is there, often in a song, there can be a point where you start to panic. So it's maybe a high note, or it's a really powerful bridge or something. Notice if the way that you breathe changes into this gasping, dragging, gulping sensation, because we want to have nice, relaxed inhales, even if they're quick, that are inaudible and you're not getting that real tight sensation here, and you can even see it. So you might want to practice in front of a mirror if that's helpful. So inhale, check that. If that's totally fine, let's move on to the next one. If it's not, you're going to have to practice what it's like not doing that over and over and over again until it becomes the new habit. And as I said, sometimes it's dependent on the part of the song and what you're thinking or how you're panicking about it. The second one is glottal onset. So I'm going to do a demonstration of this so that you know what I'm talking about. If we do, I will always love you. It's that real harsh sound that I get on the very beginning of that first note, which is the onset. We can really only hear the onset when there's no consonant there. So you guys might be singing something else that is that has a consonant. I'm trying to think of something that has a consonant on it now. But if I did, I will always love you, and just butcher that and put an N on the front of it, I can't tell if there's any harshness, any kind of attack happening on that very first note. So it's a really good idea to remove the consonant and go straight into it. If you hear that sound, you're smacking those chords together, it means that you need to have the breath coming through at the same time that you're wanting to vocalize. The is bringing the chords together without the breath being there. So think about just like using the breath that split second earlier so that you can get a cleaner onset. And I versus and I, that little push. Can you guys hear the difference in that? So the onset. If you've got a consonant, drop it off, see if you can go cleanly into that first word, that first note. If you can't, that's going to be the thing that you're going to practice. Okay, number 3, if you guys have got any questions, just fire them away. Number 3 is puffing on each note. So if I use the same example, often we can kind of separate it without knowing it. And I will always love you. So So each of them is getting this little jab, this little puff of air. When we sing, we want to release the air with one long kind of exhale across the phrase. So one of my favorite ways of testing this out is by using the straw, because you're not then distracted by the lyrics and you're not distracted by what it sounds like. You're really zoning in on, am I doing one long, consistent flow of air, no matter what the notes are, or am I separating it with these little puffs? So hopefully you can hear enough through the straw when I demonstrate this. But the little puffy one is, which happens most often on songs that are fast or songs that are kind of verging on rappy or more spoken, is more often when people are sort of separating or chopping them up with the breath there. So what we want to do is just one exhale per phrase. Does that make sense? So again, you can just try this out. Grab yourself a straw. Hopefully you guys have one, and I'll actually add a link to the workshop that I have for breath support, which includes talking more and more about the use of straws and how helpful they are for your projection and ridding yourself of this little throat irritation. And yeah, just getting more bang for your buck, more ease when you sing. So you can just go any section that you're experiencing throat tension on. Can you blow it on pitch, on the melody through the straw? And really you're just doing an ooh sound, ooh shape, because that's all we can do. And notice, am I wanting to add little puffs to break it up? Or am I actually doing one long, consistent breath out and having the notes just kind of coast along on that? So that's number 3. Number 4, too much power for what you're doing with your breath. So especially a warning for those of you who have done classical training. So my background when I was younger was classical singing. And we were taught to keep the rib cage out and to really control the breath, which is fine if you're wanting to do something that lends itself to that color. So if I do the same thing that I was doing before, and I think about holding back or controlling the air, and I will always love you. Great, beautiful, right? But not the power of Whitney. So if I'm still holding back and controlling that air, but I actually want a whole lot of power, guess where I'm going to be feeling that? So I'll see if I can demonstrate that as well. And I will always love you. Versus if I'm using the breath, I'm using it to fuel it. So often when I'm talking about chest dominant mix or that belt, we have to think about calling out, and it creates more air pressure so that can help us fuel the stronger sound. We can't be thinking about leaking it out like this. We need to use it in a different way. So, and I will always love you, uses the breath differently. So if you have the training of controlling the breath like that, that's great, but just don't try to add more power on top of that. If you're wanting to sing in a more powerful way, you're gonna have to learn how to use the breath differently. Is this all making sense, guys? Hi, Ben. So the last one, tongue tension. Now, this is one that I have certainly experienced, and I would say that 80% of my students experience this, usually on higher notes. So it doesn't usually come into play when we're singing around our speaking voices. It's just as we get higher, and also as we want to get more powerful. So it's another way that we can really start to force power. And it could be the way that you're forcing power when you're holding back the breath. So how do you know whether or not you've got tongue tension, whether or not your tongue is trying to push out the sound for you? Well, this one is really attractive. You get your tongue out of your mouth. So you're just going to rest it on your bottom lip there, and then do whatever phrase you're experiencing tension on. And do you notice a difference? If it's way easier, or if your tongue is shaking or trying to pull back inside your mouth, if you notice that it's battling you on this, it's telling you that it's probably much more involved in that section of the song than you want it to be. And obviously, you don't want to be singing with your tongue hanging out of your mouth all of the time, because you can't pronounce lyrics and it looks kind of ridiculous. But that's how you would train it. You train it to behave. If it's really battling you, I often get singers to hold it. Or you can tuck something underneath it. The straw isn't very helpful. But to hold onto it. And now I've got lipstick all over my straw. Hold onto it so that you know that if it drops, your tongue is doing something weird, something that it shouldn't be. We want the tongue to be as inactive as it possibly can, as we possibly can have it, while it's still allowed to articulate very, very lightly. We don't want it to be pushing out sounds for us. So you would experiment with having it out, and then you might decide, okay, he's starting to behave himself now. I'm going to tuck him back in. So the tip behind the bottom teeth there, nice and heavy, and doing it just on a similar sound. So, and can you keep him heavy, or are you getting more of that tension back? If having it out rid you of throat tension, it's telling you that that's something good, right? Put it back in. Can you keep it as heavy, and can you keep the throat tension at bay? Then obviously we need to start pronouncing the words again. But again, you would have the focus of having the tongue really heavy and just trying to use as little as you can to articulate. So often I like to think of, as much as possible, isolating it to the first kind of inch of my tongue, doing gentle, gentle movements. So we start with it heavy behind those bottom teeth. And I will always love you. And for the most part, it's still staying in that sort of hanging, relaxed position of the tip behind the bottom teeth. So hopefully that has given you a few things to play around with so that you can decipher what it is that is contributing to this irritation, to this strain, to the fatigue. It could be any number of those things. And you please reach out if you've got any questions about it. But I wanted to just do a little live to see if I could break some of these down and to give you a little bit of insight into why it might not really be the throat's fault. It could be other contributing factors. And that's what I think is so confusing about learning to sing, is that we think it's starting somewhere and actually it's linked to something else. So I really hope that this is helpful, and it's given you some tools and exercises and ideas to start to manage this, to start to notice which one makes a difference, and then put that into practice. You're going to have to practice this over and over and over and over again as the sole focus. So if you don't think, okay, all I've got to focus on is keeping my tongue relaxed, the old habit is going to come in. So it really does take a lot of deep practice to unwire and rewire the neural pathways so that you transform that into a new habit where you can project with a lot of ease and the tongue is not doing that kind of pushing, thrusting work for you. All right. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any questions, if you noticed which one it was for you or which few of them it was for you, and have a beautiful day. Bye.